Okay, so I did my presentation on gender and grooming, and it basically just kind of focuses on what the differences between the genders are and their grooming habits and what these expectations are, if they have any, and the differences in them. I chose this quote from an interview that I found between these two women, and it said, "It's hard to say exactly when what Haley refers to as the new body hair movement emerged. She describes it as non-boys taking up space and deciding that they're not going to adjust to the norms." I like that quote because I felt like it encompassed this whole idea, well, like basically what I ended up finding through the research, and that the men are the ones that have very little expectations as far as beauty standards go and how that affects their daily life. The issue, or the question I was trying to answer in doing this research, was if there is a difference between the genders and their grooming expectations. What I found as part of it is that the media constantly portrays men and women differently, as they usually do with different topics, but when it comes to physical looks and behaviors, that's been like a big indicator for kids growing up, like of what they should expect or how they should be, or like what's normal or what's considered normal anyway. And here I included a picture of a newspaper cutout, and it was just talking about a girl who cut herself while trying to shave. One of the articles that I found talks about an experiment that was conducted with little kids, and basically they just had them kind of organize, or not organize, but differentiate like what would be like roles or activities that had to do with males versus females. So some of it was like vacuuming or like washing dishes and stuff like that. And the study showed that for the most part, even at an early age, they were able to kind of already fall into like these stereotypes where they felt like chores and stuff had to do with women, and non-chores and all of that had to do more with men, and like more the like sort of masculine type activities. And although that didn't have to do with grooming or anything, but I felt like that was important, that the media, like to find out that the media has such a strong influence on kids like at such an early age. And then I found this ad for Gillette, which also is like a big influence, that company. It created, like through its advertisements, a push for razors, obviously, but even the razors, like the product design of it and all of that, were like they had just gray and like dull colored ones for men, and then they had colorful ones for women, and like featuring different things because they wanted to show women as being delicate, and even forming the handle and like the shape of a woman's body. But I thought this one worked well because of the baby. And it even says begin early, shave yourself. But aside from men and women, we also have non-binary people who also face a lot of issues and with identity based off what shaving means to them and everyone else. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of history, early history with hair, depending on the culture, there were different things that they would do, but for the most part, it's always been about removing hair, and it's always had to do like with some kind of cleanliness or power status symbol. I just included like a short timeline that I was able to gather, but it says 1972, body hair becomes a badge of feminism for women fighting for gender equality. The Equal Rights Amendment is passed in Congress. 1996, MIT graduate Richard Rock Sanderson discovers that at certain wavelengths, laser pulses can damage hair follicles and prevent hair from growing back. And then 3 years later, laser hair removal is the third most popular cosmetic procedure in the US, and that's still like a very huge thing. 2013, 95% of women ages 16 to 24 are removing their hair, their body hair, and at least 92% shave their legs. But that same research 3 years later changed and it lowered, so only 77% of women ages 16 to 24 were removing their underarm hair, and 85% were shaving their legs, which is interesting because kind of bleeding more into the women's section, I was finding, and also I've witnessed that in more recent years it's become like more of a beauty standard almost to not have one, as in embracing natural tendencies, so to let your hair grow, to not shave, to not get rid of it, and making that a power move instead. And in the 70s, like that was already kind of a thing that was happening. It's been a recurring issue within feminism movements, but I feel like it's really starting to kind of become bigger now and more acceptable, which is great. But generally speaking, women's expectations are to look nice and presentable and have everything cut and trimmed and shaped nicely, but when they don't, they often receive a lot of backlash. So again, like with celebrities and models or like influencers, trying to like advocate for hair growth, they often don't get applauded for it, and instead are mistreated, harassed, and even threatened. Men, on the other hand, it's basically the opposite, and their expectations end up fluctuating. And in the beginning, it was kind of like encouraged for them to grow out hair because it's seen as manly. It was seen as like, oh, if you can't grow like a mustache, then you're weak, and blah blah blah. But eventually, at some point, things shifted, and having a clean face became a power move. But now, again, things are kind of shifting, and like being scruffy is fine, it's cool. It's also possibly seen as almost a power move in itself, because it's like, oh, it's such a hassle to shave, and like keep up this look, and like I don't have time for that. And it kind of reminded me of Steve Jobs, who like didn't care about his appearance, and like people pointed out, but they don't really care about it. They didn't care about it enough to like say anything, and he would defend it by saying that he didn't have time to like even make a choice as like what he was gonna wear, so he just wore the same thing. Now, people who identify as non-binary, their biggest issue is that they already aren't trying to conform to gender, and this makes it harder for them to feel accepted by the people that around them, like their community and all of that, because it ends up becoming an issue of like people trying to set their understanding of all of this onto them, and saying, oh, well, if you wanted to be more feminine, then why haven't you shaved, and all of that. So that's what I was able to gather from that, and how that just creates a bigger issue with trying to understand who they are from a young age. But now, again, with a little bit more normalcy and like acceptance and stuff, people are able to embrace it a little bit more, but there's always more we can do. And that was it.